I'm married. And one of the features of married life is that you quite often have to do what the wife says. Well, guess what? My wife does not like my house. So I can either stay or go. Hearing that selling the house is better than getting a divorce. So we put the house on the market on June 6th, and we've had an offer, and hopefully today we'll be under contract. And if all goes as planned, closing will be July 26th. So I'm going to share some of the things that I've learned along this journey. And there are three things I'd like you to remember. First is research, second is renovate, and third is renegotiate. 3 R's. Research. First thing you got to figure out is how much is your house worth. You can do that nowadays very easily by going to websites such as Zillow.com, Trulia, Real Estate ABCs. There are a variety of websites available. Now, in the end, your house is only worth what a buyer is going to offer you for it. So the so-called Zestimate on Zillow is exactly that. It's an estimate. But it'll get you in the ballpark. And then based on that, you can determine whether you want to proceed or whether you might have to stay because you don't have enough equity in the house. As part of that research, also be aware that whatever price you see, you should also factor in some of the real estate agent fees, some money also for the renovations that you might have to do in order to get that house to sell. So be aware that the price that you have in mind for your house might not be what you get in the end. Only you will know if you're comfortable with that number. So once you've set the value of your house, you'll talk with a real estate agent and you'll hopefully be on the same page and communicate about what your needs are, about why you're selling the house. So as I mentioned before, in my case, it's because my wife wants a bigger house. My current house is 2-bedroom, 1-bath. She wants at least a 3 or 4-bedroom, 2-bath house, which is reasonable. So in order to put that house on the market, we talked to our real estate agent about not only selling our house, but we wanted to buy so that we're on the same page about what we want to get out of this transaction financially to move on to the next step. All right, so once we've determined that, we set a price that was just slightly above what we considered market value. In order to get that house to sell and to get people to come by and take a look at it, that's when we had to do the renovation part. So that's step number 2. I had in my mind, based on articles that I read, some of the things that I wanted to do. But by talking to the real estate agent, we got some very valuable advice on what would really help sell the house. So for example, my real estate agent really emphasized the curb appeal, the way the exterior looked. So what I did was I called the company that does the landscaping for my yard, which over the past several years has been simply mowing the lawn and trimming the bushes. But I talked to them and I said, well, my real estate agent says this bush near the door just needs to be completely removed. They said, okay, we can handle that. We also decided to put pine straw around all the trees on the front yard. And based on that, the landscape company came in and they essentially renovated the front yard. I have to admit that for years I lived in that house and I thought my yard looked so-so. Even I will say that it looks great, and one of my coworkers who happens to be a neighbor, lives across the street, noticed it right away, and at work the next day, she said, wow, your yard just really looks great. So that was positive feedback that, yeah, this really dramatically increased the curb appeal. I also thought about having both the exterior and interior of my house painted. My real estate agent looked at it and said, well, the interior of your house is actually in pretty good shape. So instead of painting both, just do the exterior. So we called in someone that I found on kudzu.com. They pressure washed the outside and they painted all the exterior trim. Fortunately, I have a brick house, so the painting wasn't as expensive as it would be for a house made of all wood where the entire surface has to be painted. And again, I'll say that my house looks a lot better after the exterior paint job was done. We had the offer on the table after people started visiting the house, and the potential buyer had a house inspection. One thing I didn't do, which I really wish I had done, was had the house inspected myself to take care of some of the problems that I didn't even know about. So for instance, I had a leaky pipe in the crawl space. I called in some plumbers and had them fix it. I had a septic tank which was in good shape 10 years ago when I bought the house, but apparently it's failed. I wish I had known about that before the inspection than having to deal with it right now. So next week, we can have to be on the weather and have a new septic system installed. That's an expense that I was not anticipating. But it's something that, again, if I had done proper research, if I'd had my own septic tank inspected, then I would have been aware of it before putting the house in the market, and it would have been one less thing to worry about during this time of what I'll call the third step, the renegotiation, as I'll call it. So when you get an offer, that's the start of the negotiation. But the renegotiation is, well, what am I willing to do? As it turned out, again, because the wife wants this house gone, if it were just me, I would say, well, maybe I should stay in the house a little bit longer, wait for the value to go up to compensate for this increased expense. But in the end, I figure even though I have to sell the house for a bit less than what I was expecting, especially considering the repairs I've had to do, it's cheaper than a divorce. So I'm going to go ahead and sell the house. But as part of the renegotiation, you can determine, well, do I really want to go along with what the buyer is asking me to do? The buyer asked for that new septic system after their home inspection found it. If you decide that you can hold out and you think your house is going to go up in value and that the buyer will cave in and buy it anyway and install it on their end, or maybe split the cost with you or some other tactic, then that's part of the renegotiation. And again, that goes into the research as well, knowing what your house is worth, how much you think you're going to get out of it, and whether that's going to get you to your next goal, whether it be buying a new house or moving to a smaller condo if you're an empty nester and you don't need the big house anymore. Hopefully these tips will help you if you happen to be a homeowner going to that next step. Madam Toastmaster.